Cuervo.
Present.
Claire Jolling, our secretary, is out still on holiday leave. That's an excused absence. Melissa Wyatt.
Here.
Allison Reardon.
Here.
Pam Fellon.
Here.
James Dusenberry, a residential C rep, is sick with the nasty flu I know several folks have had. Hopefully they didn't give it to him. Paul Sale. Here. Elaine Albright.
Here.
Maria Munoz, an excused absence, could not find parking. And then Zelrich Rubens. Here. And that is a quorum. So I'm going to call this meeting to order, and we will start with community and government reports. And we will start with LAPD. We'll have 3 minutes.
Good evening, everyone. Want to say hi, you're shield lead officer for this area, the Palms area, and Westside Village. I'm pleased to let you guys know that this year we finished with a crime reduction of 6.3% total. Basically what that means is last year we had 846, 903 victims total last year, and this year we have 846 victims. So some of those victims, the most victims on that would be businesses. A lot of businesses were victims of burglary and robberies. Everything else in regards to car break-ins, home burglaries, were all down. Burglaries were down 31% compared to last year. Grand theft and vehicle theft were down 16.3%. And that's thanking the community for that, because they're actually doing a better job securing their homes, securing their vehicles, not leaving anything inside their cars for the suspects to come over, look inside your car, break the window, and take whatever it is. Sometimes just an empty bag that they want. So we're pleased to announce that we finished with a positive number at the end of the year. Another thing that I want to report to you guys is that this December we gave out toys to 3,100 kids that came to Pacific Division, and we gave out toys, and we gave out 500 food baskets to the people that needed food baskets. Some of that was made possible by the Pumpkin Wood Council, who donated money to the cause to buy tents, tables, and stuff like that for the event. We had several volunteers that came out. They helped out, sort out toys and all that. So next year we'll do it again. Hopefully the Pumpkin Wood Council will sponsor us again, and we'll have more volunteers. It's always nice to see kids walking out of there with toys. This time we actually ran out of people to give out toys, versus last year we still needed more toys. But this year we had plenty more toys left, which made it possible for us to give out toys to the Blind Children's Hospital, to St. Judd, and we also give out some toys to the South Central community in 77 and Southeast Division. So we had plenty of toys thanks to people who helped sponsor the event. Any questions? Yes, sir.
What do you attribute the overall decrease in crime? You said that people are securing their goods better. Anything else that we can do to improve?
We have a new captain. Let me mention that too. His name is Captain Choi. He used to work Pacific Division when he was almost a new officer. Now he's our captain. He's the administrative captain. Captain Alberto moved on to be a commander. And we still have Captain Robert Long, who's our patrol captain. Captain Choi is more hands-on, so he's going to expect more hands-on on the officers, more involvement in task force stuff, hiding behind cars and trees and all of that, and try to apprehend suspects. So we'll probably have a better turnout at the end of the year, this coming year. But I contribute the reduction in crime to the people that have actually taken that extra step to secure their cars and secure their homes. And that's a big, it takes a lot for people to actually go inside their home and then like, did I lock my car? And sometimes they're parked 3-4 blocks away, and I've seen it where they come out and they go and check the car, make sure it's locked. Because one of the biggest issues we have here in the Palms is parking. So, and I know some people park 3-4 blocks away to walk to their home. So the fact that they take their time, lock their vehicle, and remove everything from plain sight, that has helped a great deal.
Thank you. city recently passed new rules around how multifamily building,
Yeah, I'm in the apartment.
so they passed new rules about how that's gonna work citywide. They have zones that'll be handled by different providers. Athens is gonna be who handles our area. They, will now be mandating recycling in all areas, and composting is something that, my understanding of it, I have to double check it, is still something that the building owner would have to wanna opt into, but it'd be a lot easier. At the end of the day, it's the building owner who gets to make that choice. So they can't be forced, at least not with current city rules, to do so, but the building owner could include that if they want.
What was the name of the green committee?
Yeah.
You wanna come to one of those meetings, the green committee? What is the green committee?
So the Green Committee,
Oh, that's the-
James, if he was here, be able to talk to that. He's the committee chair, but Allison, also serves on the committee. It's listed under six
Yeah,
C.
okay.
Yeah, so they meet at that time. They've talked about composting before. We definitely support that and want it in all of our buildings where we can get it. We still have focus on getting recycling in all the buildings, because that doesn't even exist in a lot of our multifamily buildings, surprisingly. And then which area, or what cross streets generally do you live in?
Regent and Green. I was also
There you
curious,
go.
yeah, emailed about the electrical box.
Oh, perfect. Got it.
That's it.
That makes sense. Yeah, so Elena is your residential rep, and then she'll be able to help connect you with the city resources that can provide your building owner the options for how they can actually get there. So if you guys can connect that, please.
Also, like maybe, like in the community garden, I believe that there is composting available. I think
There isn't it yet.
there is, yeah, okay.
It's so small at the current one, but with the next garden, we'll have a much, much larger compost pad available.
So, I can give you.
I'll email.
Okay, I'll give you my, number.
Excellent. And then the other public comment we have is, Kalan.
Yes, first of all, I'd like to commend those involved in getting the website up. Good job. After it was down for 6 months, but I know that you had a lot of challenges getting it up. I do hope that we've secured our domain name and put in extra protection for the website, so we don't have to go through that again. The second thing that comes to mind is Paul Koresh was here, I believe, in the last meeting and spoke about various projects in the area not getting done. He did comment about our tax base not being so high in Palms. And as to one of the reasons why we're not getting as much as we'd like done as far as projects in our area, like the alley behind the post office and Motor. And that got me thinking about why I've been fighting so hard, utilizing the help of our 311 services to ensure that the gateway of our community, primarily Venice and the 405 overpass, and National and the 405 overpass, where we've had issues with homeless encampments. There has not been a homeless encampment at Venice, Overland, for going on 6 months now. So small victory there. And there's not been a major homeless encampment at National and the 405 for about 2 or 3 months. There is one person that I'm hoping that we can find services for so that he can find better accommodation. But the reason I state this is that the image of our the 3 things that it requires to attract businesses. We have location, location, location.
So thank you. And then last we have Lee Wallach.
Hi, Lee from the Motor Avenue Improvement Association. One, we was down for a few weeks with the farmer's market. It fell on Christmas and New Year's. So, hitting the ground running. This year will be an exciting year with them, and hopefully, more attendance by Elena and crew, and you guys get out there and meet people people and see people, and so we encourage that to happen. Our garden, as I mentioned, has been ecstatic. The people that have been ecstatic. The waiting list is there. We're looking to put out what members will want, and because we will be starting going in right at the commissary. Very excited about it. And who knows, but they promised me within a couple weeks. So we'll see how that goes. And then not least, we are excited that we have 2 streets paved here in Palms. We're working to try and make sure, and working with them, make sure notice is much more effectively given, so people don't get towed. We had exceptional numbers of people cited and towed because they started and they stopped, and people thought they were going away, and it was a back and forth. Street that looks like it's going to get which was one that was on taken off because it was construction of Expo and other things, is actually motor, and that is from Mentone all the way to Palms will be done now. So that's my report from home.
Great, thank you. Okay, so that closes general public comment. Thank you for those comments. All right, so we're now going to move on to our consent agenda. And for those who have been here before, this should be familiar, but just to recap how that works, the consent agenda are items that the chair is proposing as non-controversial and is hoping that the board will agree are non-controversial, not comment on, we'll vote on them as a block, and move forward with our meetings so we can spend more time discussing items that might be controversial. However, any item on the consent agenda can be pulled by any board member or called special. To pull it off the consent agenda, we'll slot it in later in the agenda to deal with that then. And then the same goes to any member of the public. If you have submitted a comment card on something on the consent agenda, we'll pull that so that we can handle that separately so that your comment can be heard before we address it. Seeing no comment cards on the items on the consent agenda, does anyone on the board?
I'll make a motion that we accept it as presented.
All right, does anyone want to pull anything off the consent agenda? Seeing none, that is brighter. I missed that light when I went in here. Seeing nothing to pull off the consent agenda, I will move that to a vote. Any abstentions? Seeing none. Any nays? Seeing 0. And I'll be able to move on from that. Just so folks know what we just all voted on, approved the minutes last time, approved money for hosting that new website that was mentioned earlier, approved $200 for refreshments for the homeless count on January 25th. Please sign up for that, but I'll let Pam talk about that. It should be noted that well, I'll let Pam talk about that too. And then just change a number of things around some of our committees, remove 2 members that either haven't been present or have asked to be removed. Added a member to Andy's Transportation and Infrastructure Committee, appointed Pam as our Purposeful Aging Liaison for the Palms Neighborhood Council to the City of Los Angeles. There's a number of things where they ask for a liaison for the neighborhood to basically keep us informed about what's happening at the city. Same with Jeffrey Fellon as the film liaison for the Neighborhood Council to the City of Los Angeles. Moving on to executive board reports. I have basically nothing to report. We had a great December. It was nice and quiet. Away for a bit. I'm hoping this will be a quick meeting and that everyone will join us at the garage afterwards to have a Happy New Year, non-alcoholic or otherwise beverage of their choice. And that's my report. Andy.
My report last month was about the website too, so I'm surprised to see this.
Yeah, you know.
Sure that we have a new website again. Good job, Andy.
Excellent. Claire is not here, as noted, and I don't know of anything she wanted to add to her report. Melissa with the treasurer's report.
Okay, so for the month of December, we spent a total of $1,466.34. We have a remaining balance in the bank of $11,275.83.
All right, so we'll move to the floor. If there was a second to that motion to approve. Hearing a second from Pam. Oh, I actually have to write these down. Our minutes writer is also sick, and so he's going to want me to be able to tell him who did these things. Right? Yeah. So a couple things to note on the treasurer's report just before we finish it up. We have $11,000 left in the bank, but the bank keeps getting refilled with our total budget as we go. So we do have a balance of our budget for the year of $30,000, give or take, not including the $17,000 that we had our council member hold over from next year. So that's a decent chunk of money that we got to spend between now and July 1. Our next exec board meeting will be predominantly, if not solely, focused on really kind of coming up with what are the big chunks we want to put that money into. We will be finding out later this month whether or not we won or didn't win the streets challenge. If that's the case, that'll handle about 12,000 of that. But either way, that still leaves a really solid chunk of change. So if you're interested in deciding where the rest of that money goes, exec committee later this month. And with that, any questions or comments on the board on the treasurer's report or monthly expenditure report? Seeing none and seeing no public comment cards, we will move that to a vote. Any abstentions? Any nays? Seeing none, we will approve that unanimously. Thank you, everybody. And then Allison, for your report.
I just have one announcement. On January 21st is the Women's March, the Los Angeles version of the Women's March that's happening in DC and elsewhere around the country. And it's called Women's March, but it's open to everyone, and we everyone come on out. It's going to march from Pershing Square to City Hall and then back to Pershing Square for a rally. Starts at 10 a.m. and will probably go till about 2:30 to 3 in the afternoon. So I encourage everybody to attend.
Great. Committee reports, and we'll start with Elena and the Commercial Corridor Activation Committee.
Cool. So it was a quiet December for us. We did not have a meeting, but we did receive news that we received our promised reward for the Queen Street Challenge, which is $1,000 and $1,500. Which is pretty cool. We did what we set out to do. It was great.
Good job.
So that's basically the big news there. As Nick mentioned, we're waiting to hear back about the Great Street Challenge to see if we can get Overland some attention there. And then this month we'll be meeting and talking about how we want to spend some money this year, and would encourage people that are interested in art and business and local interaction with businesses to come out to our meeting.
Awesome. Moving on to communications. I know Claire's in here, and I don't believe there's a meeting. Anything you want to add?
In Claire's stead, I think one thing that we'd emphasize as a committee is that we're looking for more members to get involved. This is a very important committee for the council. Outreach about what we do as a council and both what's happening in the neighborhood is really important. If you're interested, please attend and find an area that you'd like to help out.
Great. And James is not here. I don't know if Allison, if you want to mention anything about Green.
We did not have
Oh,
a
they had a
meeting
meeting,
either,
yeah.
so yeah, no.
December was quiet. Melissa with planning,
We didn't have a meeting in December either.
but you do have an exciting meeting coming up. You want to preview that?
Well, we have an exciting meeting coming up on January 16th. So we have a developer coming. What's the street? Overland. Venice and what's the street?
Hughes?
Is this Hughes?
No.
Vinton? One of those.
Venice and Glendon.
Glendon.
Thank you.
Yeah, Venice and Glendon. So you guys come out for the surprise.
It's be a very large mixed-use development that's being proposed. It was talked about in Curved LA and a couple other publications in the last month or two. So if you're think size of what's going up on Overland or the M Lofts, sizable building. So if you're curious about that, that's the committee meeting to head to. Paul, with public safety.
We didn't heard that was brought to my attention. In regards to our area, talked to Officer Seha about this as well. There's been a string, because holidays, a lot of mail theft. I know some USPS vehicles were broken into and items were taken from those areas. That's something that LAPD doesn't handle. That goes to the federal side. So they deal with that. I don't have any updates in regards to that. There are a couple car break-ins, and I believe in the last 24 hours there are cars that were stolen from a building at Dunn and Tabor. Also is going to get some more information in regards to that. So basically, is that people need to start locking their cars. Do not leave your keys. If your car is parked tandem, don't leave your keys on the wheel well. Don't leave it unlocked. Lock your car. Take your keys. Take it upstairs to your apartment or your house, and just look out for each other in regards to just safety in general. Now, LAPD can't be everywhere at every moment. That's just not a reality. So one thing that we have to do is if you see something suspicious in your area or on your street, then you think it's just something out of the ordinary, please report it. Tell somebody. You can email me or you can email Officer Ceja. He's very accessible. So please look out for each other. The one thing I want to touch on in regards to volunteers, and Andy talked about this, but the Public Safety Committee is getting a little bit thin, so we actually need volunteers to start being block captains. And this is very important because we have a lot of information to put out to our area and our neighborhood. And if we have these block captains, information will flow faster and we'll get more information to us. And that helps with resourcing as well as visibility for LAPD. So if you'd like to volunteer, please contact me. We have business cards now, so I can give you a business card after the meeting. Lastly, we talked about Palm Safety Day a couple months ago. We as a committee thought that Palm Safety Day should be Palm's Community Day. Now, what we're thinking is having an actual day dedicated to operations as well as emphasizing public safety with LAPD. So we plan on closing national by, or trying to get approval to close national in front of Palm Station in April. That's something we're thinking about. I just wanted to get a quick feel from our neighborhood council if you guys would like to support that. You guys think it's a good idea to actually open it up and say it's Palm's Community Day as opposed to just a safety day? And at that point we can do community outreach. I have a plan that's put together that I plan on briefing the executive board, or hopefully we can get the money that we have, that 17 grand, allocated to that event. And I think if we do it right the first time, it can be an annual event for everybody in Palms. So I guess just by a show of hands, who's in support of it, I guess?
Sounds like a
Yeah.
good idea.
Well, thank you very much. But that's what we plan to do in April. As soon as we get approval to close the street, we're going to start doing the planning for it. And if we get buy-in from the council, obviously we can move forward. But that's something to look forward to. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Great. Andy with Transportation Infrastructure.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. I just wanted to update you. We met on December 12th. We had actually a pretty jam-packed agenda, but before mentioning the items on the agenda, I just wanted to share my excitement for having Francie Steffen join our Transportation Committee, which we just confirmed just now. Francie is the Mobility Division Manager for the City of Santa Monica, and she has been instrumental, if not crucial, in bringing the first bike share system to Los Angeles, which is Santa Monica. We are so excited to have her join our Transportation Committee, and I look forward to her involvement in the Bike Council as we continue to pursue policy in our committee. I just wanted to share from our last meeting a few quick items. I wanted to recap that both the PNC, the Motor Improvement Association, LADOT are looking to meet with Caltrans we're looking at the Overland entrance to the I-10 West. We're looking forward to that meeting for approval of an additional lane to the freeway. Also wanted to add that there was a 4-way stop sign control installation on Keystone and Woodbine. We're also currently looking forward now at installing a LED sign on Rose Avenue. We had a death there. I believe, was it last year or the year before?
It's about 2 years ago.
2 years now. Before any of us address the signage, cars just zoom by and there's just no pedestrian or even car signage at all. Also wanted to say Ciclavia is coming on 6th. It is from Venice to Culver City. It will be touching parts of Palm, so we encourage you to come out and show strong support as a community that we're involved in this, that we do support biking. Also wanted to share, if you missed our last meeting, 2 meetings before was that Culver City is going to be including Palms and its bike share service system. They just did a feasibility study and they found that Palms actually has the highest bike share potential in the west side, outside of communities in Santa Monica, West Hollywood, and UCLA. Culver City is currently working on rolling out its own bike share system. They haven't decided a vendor yet, but that will be coming in February. So look forward to that because we're probably going to be working very closely to get bike share to Palms within the next year or two. Also wanted to share that our next meeting is going to be on Monday, January 9th, which is next Monday. Please join us. That's it.
Great. All right, bylaws committee. So into last month, but we kind of ran up against time, and I knew this meeting would be light, so this gets to be like bylaws fun meeting, which I'm sure everyone shares my enthusiasm for parliamentary procedure. So we got 5 motions here. As members of the board and the public will recall, we've been working through a overhaul of our bylaws from start to finish after we finished an overhaul of our ground rules from start to finish, as many of those hadn't been updated since 2004 when Neil and others started the council. He's quietly sitting in the back, but he's been here for longer than all of us combined. Not that you're old. You're not. But
Well seasoned.
Yeah, well seasoned. So we've been working through a full bylaws overhaul, and some of the meatiest parts of that are what we're going to work on today, which is regarding how our exec board is elected, how a new process to remove myself and others on the exec board if we're not doing our jobs well enough, as well as changing some of the titles of members of the executive board, looking at adding a seat to the council that wasn't here previously in exchange for a seat that currently is on the council but has often been vacant, and making a few other changes that we'll get through. So we'll move into that piece of it, and the first motion here is G.I, which is to approve Article 3, Section 2, and revising the election rules for business reps to be elected by all Palm stakeholders 16 and over, as well as reducing the total number of business seats from 3 to 2. So if someone would like to second that, I'll explain what that just meant. Thank you. So right now we have 3 business seats and 5 residential rep seats. Each of those seats are elected based on a map that defines districts, just like your Congress seats are elected. And that has led to very, very, very low turnout races for business rep seats. Richard, how many people voted for you in your race?
17.
17, which is high for a business seat, actually.
Actually,
Good.
Maria, the other business rep person we have here, was elected with 6 votes. And last election, I think we had someone who might have been elected with 3. Because the only people that can vote are people that either work at a business or own a business in that map area. Which, if you cut Palms up into 3, it's a pretty small group of folks that are even eligible to vote. Proposing here at the bylaws committee is basically threefold. The first is to say we don't want to do boundaries anymore. We'll elect business folks at large within Palms. So, you could have 2 people technically that ran from, the corner of Overland and National, and that would be okay, whereas now it wouldn't be. The second change we're proposing is that instead of business reps being able to only be elected by that work at a business or own a business, they'd be able to be elected just like the exec board by anybody who lives in Palms, or is a stakeholder in Palms, I should say. And the third change is proposing the number of seats from 3 to 2. So those seats might arguably hold a little bit more clout because they've been elected by larger amounts of people, but there'll be less total of them. And later on, you'll see we're recommending adding a youth seat to the council instead to try that out. So that's what's being proposed. Before we move into board comment, we'll move into public comment that I currently have in front of me, which is from Lee Wallach.
So, congratulations on Mark to get all that table. This has been a long time coming. It's great to see. And I think that expanding the neighborhood is a great idea. I am concerned about cutting it from 3 to 2. I think we have a large thriving business community here. I think you guys have seen increased participation, and you should look for more participation, yes, even from the business community. I think weighing it that far, the whole council in a residential direction, is just not a good practice. I think, you know, you should have a good, healthy number of businesses there. And I actually think with this new council, I think you'll get there. It takes one main thing, which you just haven't had time to really do, and that's outreach. So I would expand, you know, the borders, but leave it at 3, because, you know, businesses are a huge part of what goes on in homes, and you just have to do the outreach, and I think you'll get 3. Okay, change. Make the effort.
Okay, so we'll now move to board question or comment. One thing I want to mention before we do that, all 5 of these are approval still in. So what will happen, our bylaws committee, our last, because it is an ad hoc meeting, probably our ad hoc committee, probably our last meeting this month to finalize our final the last pieces of it. And what we'll do is then bring back the package, because when you amend your bylaws, they actually have to go to the department and then the Board of Neighborhood Commissioners, and it's a lot easier instead of sending them 15. We actually file a form. It's really annoying. As opposed to sending them 15 of those, pissing them off, and then filling out 15 forms, we'll just do 1 for a full bylaws overhaul. So we will see all this stuff that we've done in the last 5 months in the bylaws coming back once more as a full bylaws document, just to clarify that for folks, in case they're worried it's the last bite of the apple. Anyway, opening up your comments, and I will start from my left.
I tend to agree. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I tend to agree. Did you have something?
Go ahead, I'll go after you.
Hey, you were first. I didn't.
Either order. You,
It doesn't matter.
It's okay, I forgot what question.
Don't we have an open business seat now?
we do.
Right.
I mean, has that been open for a long time?
At least as long as I've been on the council. We didn't have anybody for the last term either.
Okay, so it kind of seems like maybe it's a better idea to have 2 instead of 3. And if we can't find anybody to fill the seats, what's the point? My 2 cents.
Richard?
I tend to agree with Lee in the sense that maybe in a way may not be correct. I think that if you took it and just divided it into thirds, I think that you can get it, because each of these areas have different issues that go with it, and I think the representation doesn't get diluted. Better to have an empty seat and be prepared. You know, the changes and everything else I'm fine with, but I do think we want the representation correct. And just keep at it.
Okay. Any other comments on my right?
I would tell people that Tom's is the best kept secret in the West Side, and I think part of that is that we have great businesses and restaurants, from Tiki Fish that just opened to Amnaka, which has been on Netflix now for how many years now. We have a great business community. I think one of the reasons that we haven't had a better engagement is that the business seats are restricted by geographical area.
Right.
So I actually also 3 seats, and by opening them up to the entire neighborhood, then we'll only have, if not a flood of people, at least complete people running into us.
One question.
Mm-hmm.
What happens if we approve I and, if we amend I to keep 3 seats and we also approve 3, or?
Yeah, so
I?
so this was something we went back and forth on for quite some time at several meetings at the bylaws committee, which is that we initially wanted to keep 3 seats, but we also wanted to add a youth seat. We also talked about adding, I can't remember, it was a school seat or something else. The issue is that if we do that, we've got an even number of board members, which is not ideal. Nothing illegal about it. You can have 16 board members or 14 board members, but it leads to much more chances of deadlock where you get, even votes. That The other thing that we could consider doing, and something we discussed in the bylaws committee, but generally folks felt that they did not want to expand the board from 13 up, but we could also go up to 15, and we could add another residential rep, we could add another executive board officer if we thought there was a position that they, I mean, we can do anything we want. Basically, if there are seats that don't exist currently on our board, and we want to create it to fill a constituency that we don't think is currently represented, we can absolutely do that.
Is it possible to, so if we wanted to keep 3 business rep seats, but we also wanted, some representation from the youth community, can we add a non-voting, is that allowed to add a non-voting member to the board?
Yes, technically we have the ability right now to appoint a youth representative to our board under our current bylaws as a non-voting member. We have that. We can do that
might be
currently.
an idea,
Yeah.
to prevent deadlock, but yet still have some
Yeah.
representation.
I would argue that if I was, not even if I was a youth, when I was a youth and now, if I wasn't allowed to vote, it would be very hard to persuade me to bother. I'm to sit up here and have the same responsibilities of reading through everything and all that and not have the ability to make your voice heard with a vote, I think is a harder sell. 2 cents. Yeah.
We should also consider that even if you run for residential seat, you can still be a business owner. So it's not like there's any limitation on that end. In fact, all 6 representatives could be business owners.
That's true. Any
Really
thoughts?
quick, I think in general, just leaving, like Lee was saying, I think we do have potential to grow because we just got the ball rolling on the committee, and I think more outreach is going to be done, and I'd rather have room to grow as opposed to cutting something off and then fixing it later. So I'm kind of in that camp.
And I
Okay.
like Allison's idea as well, maybe having a youth as a non-voting member, but allowing them to still come on.
Out of curiosity, do we have like a lot of representation in the audience from business owners?
Got Neil. And
But like
should-
in general,
you count?
in general,
Business owner that's held that, one of the business seats in the past, and I was also on the committee that chose to remove the business seat.
fair point. Neil does sit on our, he was the
Yeah.
vice chair of our bylaws committee.
We
Yeah.
could also have the bylaws committee maybe change the business seats to just be general rep seats. So they're open to not just business, but also education or, I mean, anybody really from the community.
I guess you don't have to, you're on the committee.
It's topical, I didn't know, but I was
Go
gonna
for it.
say, if you read the way that the bylaws are structured in the suggestion, you could still have a council that's very heavily business representing. So it sounds like you're taking away a business seat, but you're still have enough at-large seats that could be represented and filled by business owners. So you're not, if business owners want to get involved, it's not, they're unable to do so.
Appreciate that.
well,
I'll let you comment on it in a bit. I'm going to bring it back to the board. As a committee member, give him extra, well, it's your comment.
Can I call the question on the motion that's currently before us?
If you'd like to, I would also propose that we consider holding it over, going through some of the other ones in here and coming back to it. If folks would like to mull on it for a bit as we talk about the school or the youth rep seat. Because if we vote down the youth rep seat, that may answer the question for us. If that's amenable.
Or it might inform what we want to do.
It might do it.
If we
You
vote
are welcome to make a motion, of course, at all times.
Call the question on this.
Okay, so there's a motion on the floor to close debate and move to a vote. Is there a second? Seeing no second, the motion fails. Yeah, that is a first. That's exciting. I haven't seen that in a while. So I will move to table item I and move it to be considered after item 5. If folks are amenable to that, if there is a second.
Second.
Hearing a second. Any comments on that motion? Seeing none, move that to a vote. Any abstentions? Any nays? All right, so we will table that to later in this discussion. Not altogether a surprise. We'll move on to item 2, which is a motion for the Palms NC to approve amending the bylaws to amend the titles of secretary and treasurer throughout to read communications director and finance director. Hopefully less controversial. If there is a second to that. Hearing one from Elena, I believe, right?
Yeah.
Okay. This is much more simple. We had some secretary for the neighborhood council. Name doesn't actually really fit their role. Their role is predominantly related to outreach, newsletter creation, meeting organization, which is probably something we consider a secretary. But they don't actually do minutes writing because we pay for someone to do that. And we found a lot of people don't want to run for that seat because they view it as being potentially more or not being, actual role that it has unless you read the description. So we felt communications director was much more clear in what the role actually describes, and will actually also attract or more likely to fit that role description. And treasurer sounded weird together. Finance director. That's what we proposed as a name change. If the board. Andy.
I actually think this is a very interesting proposal. For it's very undemocratic. I think we have a communications outreach, creating like a communications czar. What's the relationship between that and the our secretary, also the chair of the committee? But there may come in the future way past us at one point where that may not be the case, and I would feel more comfortable if those two roles be kept separate. I would also be inclined that the secretary position actually does secretary duties at some point, and it goes back to the very nature of this body, which is that somebody should be taking notes, and whether we pay for that or not, there may come the day that we can't afford that, and what do we do then? So I think those duties outlined are important.
Okay, that's a good point. Any other questions or comments from the board?
Does this mean they get new business cards?
These changes would take effect, all of these changes, as you know, will take effect at the next election cycle. None of these will affect the current board.
Great.
In case that's a question.
Save some money.
Yeah, that's a great clarifying point.
I agree with Andy. I don't understand
Yeah.
the whole, why we would want to change that. There are the executive officers. In a corporation, you have executive officers, and a director is a step below that. And everybody that ran for one of those
Right.
offices on this council, I assume, knew what they were getting into with the status. I mean, it's a step above. And I think that it minimizes the responsibility, the status, and I think it's really that we would even consider changing it.
Any other comments from the board? Okay, seeing none. Didn't mention if you wanted to speak on double I, triple I. Which ones were you putting a comment card in for? Just so I know.
I thought the rest were decent suggestions. I was good with
Okay. Just to clarify, so no. So what I'll say based on those comments. Got it. Thanks. Say to kind of the comments that have been made, we haven't proposed changing the duties of the secretary, which do note minutes writing if a minutes writer isn't hired. The secretary, our current secretary, member of the bylaws committee, agreed with the push that since that isn't really advertised as being predominantly communications based, but historically been, that it would be more enticing to get more people to run that seat that have that skill, and that outreach is the most important thing we do, which is the main reasons why we propose this change. That there's certainly something to be said for having the concerns about an outreach committee, not necessarily if you don't have the outreach director chair the outreach committee or the communications director. That's a fair point. It would be difficult or interesting. That said, we felt that the benefits of really pushing to get somebody who has a strong motivation and outreach, which is the most important thing that we do, and it's been something we've often struggled with, was worth clarifying that role's position, or in some ways changing it and elevating the outreach pieces over the sort of, administrative pieces to entice people to run for that, which I would also note has been an uncontested seat for the last 2 elections.
Wouldn't it make more sense to change the description than it
Right.
would to change the title?
Right.
I think there's probably something to be said for both. I think there's some changes we can make to the description, and we could require that they chair the outreach committee as part of what they're running for. That's not uncommon in neighborhood councils. A lot of neighborhood councils directly elect, because in many neighborhood councils, the piece of it is huge, and the planning is the most controversial, especially in parts of West Los Angeles, and they often directly elect the chair of that committee. So that is possible. Yeah,
I just
and that's
think-
something we could take back and consider.
There needs to be a heightened sense of responsibility in those positions,
Right.
in my opinion. And I think that if you change the name, I know it's just a name, but I think it makes a difference. A lot of people will look at it differently.
Right.
We should also note that the elections, what is it, elections chair person that's appointed is appointed by the president, and that it is the duty of that elections chairperson to advertise those positions accordingly. I think the advertising of the council elections has been very poor, if not terrible, if not abysmal, if not an embarrassment. And so this is not how we fix it. We
Better descriptions.
And making sure that everybody knows exactly what they're running.
Right. Duties are clear.
Got it.
And besides, I might want to be a director and that made me jealous.
That is fair. Okay. Okay. All right, so we will move some more comments from the board at the moment. We'll move to public comment. Kalani?
I was involved in this debate, and my fear, and I agree with Andy and Pam, my fear was that we were going overboard, especially in this last general presidential. And that there was time and effort being spent trying to something that maybe isn't broken. With Pam, that maybe the definition of the duties of the secretary should be changed. I think my exact comment during the committee of this was Secretary of State. It seems like somebody's ego might be in the way here, that might be pushing for this. This has not been an issue in the past, and I have concerns about that, all over a title. So that is my comment.
Great. Thank you. All right, so we'll move that into a vote unless there's any further comments.
Are you requiring cards for each?
Kind of, but you do have a card in, so we'll count it.
I don't know what to predict you saying. Okay, I just wanted to comment on something Andy said about the communication director title, how that would conflict with the committee. Historically, the treasurer has been the head of the budget ad hoc committee, and I don't see any reason why the same couldn't apply for the secretary, whose role has covered communication efforts to be the same kind of traditionally communication operation. I believe at least ago, if not the last council. And then in changing the description as it stands is currently really focused on the communications aspect already. If it's a prestige thing, I feel like there's a title that could be chosen that still has prestige and gets the point across about it being communications. But in trying to get people to run last time around, the title secretary really did turn people off because they really did think of it as kind of like a menial thing. And look, it's not, this is me just talking to other people. Experience of trying to get people to run for that position. That's not a popular position, you know, maybe if some of the people who had run for vice president had known it was more a communications role, they might have considered that, for instance.
Thanks. All right, so we'll move that into a vote. Any abstentions? Seeing none. Any nays? Which is, I expect several. Okay, that is 5. And then all in favor?